Hello and welcome to today's lecture of object-oriented programming using Java with the paper code CS504A. Myself Shayani Chandru, Assistant Professor of Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Guru Nanak Institute of Technology. So let's look at today's contents. Today we will be learning properties of object-oriented programming, a brief overview of Java programming, history of Java, what are the features of Java programming, and a detailed overview of bytecode and JVM. So let's first look at the characteristics or properties of object-oriented programming. The first property of object-oriented programming is abstraction. Abstraction or data abstraction have already been discussed as the one of the major elements of object model. So today I am giving you a brief overview of it again. Abstraction is nothing but displaying or showing the essential information only, and the not so required information will be hidden from the user. That is known as data hiding. So if I consider an example of a person going to withdraw some cash from ATM machine, this can also be considered as an abstraction, because the person who has gone to withdraw some cash from the ATM needs to know how to operate the ATM machine to withdraw cash only. He or she doesn't need to know how the ATM operates and how the ATM dispenses the cash. That means the only required information that must be known to the person is how the ATM operates. Sorry, how to operate the ATM. So we can say that only that much information is available to the person, and the not so required information here in this case is how the ATM operates. That information is not at all needed by the person. That's why that information is hidden from the person. That is known as data hiding. So data abstraction is basically revealing only the essential information to the user, and data hiding is nothing but hiding the unnecessary or not so essential information from the user. Let's go to the next property or characteristic of object-oriented programming, which is encapsulation. Encapsulation is also discussed while discussing the major elements of object model. Encapsulation is binding or wrapping up data and code or methods together in order to prevent unauthorized access and wastage of data. We have given an example of a capsule where we have shown that the inner medicine of the capsule is the actual medicine that will heal or cure our diseases. But we take the inner medicine along with a capsule kind of wrapper so that the outside wrapper of the capsule protects the inner medicine from wastage and unauthorized accesses. The same way, when in case of object oriented programming, data and code means the codes that are written inside the methods to operate on the data members. When these two things, data and the codes, are bound together or wrapped up together inside a capsule kind of thing in order to prevent the same from unauthorized access or wastage, we call them as encapsulation. Now, what is the capsule or wrapper in case of encapsulation in object-oriented programming languages? The capsule or wrapper kind of thing can be considered as a class inside which we write down the data members and the methods within which we write down the codes which will actually operate on the data members. So a class can be considered as the wrapper which will actually wrap up the data and code together to prevent misuse and unauthorized accesses and wastage. So let's move on to the next property of object-oriented programming, which is polymorphism. So polymorphism can be described as one thing which can have many forms. Polymorphism basically comes from two words. One is poly, which means many, and another one is morph, which means forms. So polymorphism means many forms. Now, many forms of what? many forms of functions or methods. So when we use methods or functions in a Java program or in any object-oriented programming language, those methods or functions can be used in many forms. That means one particular method or function can be used in many forms. When we do so, we call that property as polymorphism. Let us go to the next slide to explain the concept in a better way. If we look at this image, you can see that Mr. John is a person. This person behaves like a son when he is with his parents. The same person behaves like a husband when he is with his wife. The same person, Mr. John, behaves like a father when he is with his daughter. The same person, Mr. John, behaves like an employee when he is in office. That means only one person is there who is Mr. John, but he is behaving in 5 different ways in 5 different situations. So this is kind of polymorphism, we can say. In the next image, in this image, we can see that a person is there. That person, when he is with his family members, he is behaving like a family person. When he is at his office, he is behaving like an employee. When he is at a grocery shop, he is behaving like a customer. That means the same person is behaving in 3 different ways in 3 different situations. One with his family members, another one as an employee in his office, another one in a grocery store as a customer. So we can say that one person is having many forms. That means polymorphism concept is applied here also. The same concept when applied in any object-oriented programming language is known as polymorphism. Here in this case, in these 2 images, we have seen that Mr. John as a person who is depicting the concept of polymorphism. And here in the lower image, we can see that a person who is behaving in 3 different ways in 3 different situations. This person is depicting polymorphism also. So in case of object oriented programming languages, a method or a function can depict the same concept of polymorphism. That means only one method or function will be there which will behave in different ways in different situations. Then we call it as polymorphism in object oriented programming languages. So let's move on to the next concept, which is inheritance. Inheritance we have already discussed while discussing major elements of object model. Inheritance is nothing but inheriting the properties of another class in technical terms. In If we consider it in our family, then also we can see that the same inheritance concept happens. How? Let's see with an example. If we consider this example, the first 2 persons are parents and the next person is their child. So the child has actually inherited all the properties from their parents. So the parent class's properties are being inherited into the child class. So this concept can be thought of as an inheritance concept. This concept is always applied in any family hierarchy. In the next image, if we consider this image, animal is a normal generalized class. Dog is an animal. Cat is also an animal. That means dog class has inherited all the properties of animal class. That means all the properties that a normal animal can have are there also inside the dog classes, and all the properties that a normal animal can have are there also inside the cat classes. That means the dog class and the cat class, both the classes are inherited classes from the animal class. Or we can say that dog and cat are subclasses or child classes of the parent class animal. So this is also inheritance. That means inheritance is a property where a child class inherits the properties of its parent class. The parent class is also known as superclass or base class, and the child class is also known as subclass or derived class. So till now we have learned 4 properties of object-oriented programming: abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. Let's move on to the next 2 properties, which are class and object. Class and object have already been discussed in a broader way in my 2 previous lectures. So I am not going into detail. I am just explaining it with one sentence, that class is a blueprint or template which will give an idea of how the objects will behave, the objects which will be created from the class. And the objects will have identity, state, and behavior. Those were the things that an object should contain, which should be mentioned inside the class. The next property is message passing. Message passing is a property where we will see that one object will communicate with another object. One object will always communicate with another object, and every object will pass some messages or some information in between them. That thing is known as message passing. When one object communicates with another object, it obviously communicates in order to pass some messages or information. So how the objects will communicate with each other, that will be shown in later lectures, in when I'll be teaching the exact programming language, which is Java. So as of now, the concept of message passing is that when two or more objects will be communicating with each other, some messages or information will be communicated in between them. So that concept is known as message passing. So these are the properties of object-oriented programming languages. Any kind of object-oriented programming language is based on these properties. So in our course, we will be learning Java as one of the object-oriented programming language. There you will see how Java can incorporate or implement all these characteristics of object-oriented programming through codes. Let's move on to the next slide. This slide I have already discussed. So up to this, all the basic concepts of object-oriented analysis and design and object-oriented programming are discussed. So from now on, we will be learning the language Java, and we will see how Java can be considered as one of the most efficient object-oriented programming languages, and how Java can implement all the features and all the properties or characteristics of object-oriented programming. So before going into the detail, let's first learn what is the Java language. Java is a programming language and a platform also. Java is a high-level, robust, object-oriented, and secure programming language. Java was developed by Sun Microsystems, which is now the subsidiary of Oracle, in the year 1995. James Gosling is known as the father of Java. Before Java, its name was Oak. Since Oak was already a registered company, so James Gosling and his team changed the name Oak to Java. We will discuss the history of Java language in detail in the next slides. Now the question is, why Java is a platform also? A platform is basically any hardware or software environment in which a program runs. Since Java has a runtime environment, which is known as JRE or Java Runtime Environment, and an API also, that's why it is called a platform. According to Sun, 3 billion devices run Java. There are many devices where Java is currently being used. Some of them are desktop applications such as Acrobat Reader, media player, antivirus, etc. Web applications such as irctc.co.in, etc. Enterprise applications such as banking applications. Mobile phones, embedded systems, smart cards, robotics, games, and many more. There are mainly 4 types of applications that can be created using Java programming. They are standalone application, web application, enterprise application, and Mobile application. So I'll discuss each one of them in brief. The first one is standalone application. Standalone applications are also known as desktop applications or window-based applications. These are traditional software that we need to install on every machine. Examples of standalone applications are media player, antivirus, etc. AWT and Swing are used in Java for creating standalone applications. The next one is web application. An application that runs on the server side and creates a dynamic page is called a web application. Currently, Servlet, JSP, Struts, Spring, Hibernate, JSF, etc. technologies are used for creating web applications in Java. The next one is enterprise application, an application that is distributed in nature, such as banking applications, etc., is called enterprise application. It has advantages of the high level security, load balancing, and clustering. In Java, EJB is used for creating enterprise applications. The last one is mobile application. An application which is created for mobile devices is known as a mobile application. Currently, Android and Java ME are used for creating mobile applications. There are mainly four platforms or editions of Java. Java SE or Java Standard Edition, Java EE or Java Enterprise Edition, Java ME or Java Micro Edition, and Java FX. Now let us discuss about each one of them in brief. The first one is Java SE or Java Standard Edition. It is a Java programming platform. It includes Java programming APIs such as java.lang, java.io, java.net, java.util, java.sql, and java.math, etc. It includes core topics like OOPS, string, regular expression, exception, inner classes, multi-threading, IOStream, networking, AWT, swing, reflection, collection, etc. The next one is Java EE or Java Enterprise Edition. It is an enterprise platform which is mainly used to develop web and enterprise applications. It is built on the top of the Java SE platform. It includes topics like Servlet, JSP, web services, EJB, JPA, etc. The next one is Java ME or Micro Edition. It is a micro platform which is mainly used to develop mobile applications. The last one is Java FX. It is used to develop rich internet applications. It uses a lightweight user interface API. Most importantly, to learn Java, you must have the basic knowledge of C or C++ programming language. Now let's discuss the detailed history of Java programming language. The history of Java is very interesting. Java was originally designed for interactive television, but it was too advanced technology for the digital cable television industry at that time. The history of Java starts with the Green Team. Java team members, also known as Green Team, initiated this project to develop a language for digital devices such as set-top boxes, televisions, etc. However, it was suited for internet programming. Later, Java technology was incorporated by Netscape. The principles for creating Java programming were simple, robust, portable, platform independent, secured, high performance, multi-threaded, architecture neutral, object oriented, interpreted, and dynamic. Java was developed by James Gosling, who is known as the father of Java in 1995. James Gosling and his team members started the project in the early 90s. Currently, Java is used in internet programming, mobile devices, games, e-business solutions, etc. There are given significant points that describe the history of Java. Initially designed for small, embedded systems in electronic appliances like set-top boxes. Firstly, it was called GreenTalk by James Gosling and the file extension was .gt. After that, it was called Oak and was developed as a part of the Green project. Now, the question may come, why Java was named Oak at first? Because oak is a symbol of strength and chosen as a national tree of many countries like the USA, France, Germany, Romania, etc. In 1995, oak was renamed as Java because it was already a trademark by Oak Technologies. Now the question may arise, that is why Java programming was named Java. The team gathered to choose a new name after oak. The suggested words were dynamic, revolutionary, silk, jolt, DNA, etc. They wanted something that reflected the essence of the technology: revolutionary, dynamic, lively, cool, unique, and easy to spell and fun to say. According to James Gosling, Java was one of the top choices along with Silk. Since Java was so unique, most of the team members preferred Java than other names. Java is an island of Indonesia where the first coffee was produced, which is called Java coffee. It is a kind of espresso bean. Java name was chosen by James Gosling while having coffee near his office. In 1995, Time magazine called Java one of the 10 best products of 1995. JDK 1.0 released in January 23, 1996. After the first release of Java, there have been many traditional features added to the language. Now Java is being used in Windows applications, web applications, enterprise applications, mobile applications, cards, etc. Each new version adds some new features in Java. Now the question comes, why should we learn Java? The first feature of Java programming language is object-oriented. Java is an object-oriented programming language. Everything in Java is an object. Literally everything can be considered an object, as an object in Java. Object-oriented means we organize our software as a combination of different types of objects that incorporates both data and behavior. Object-oriented programming is a methodology that simplifies software development and maintenance by providing some rules. The basic concepts of object-oriented programming we have just discussed. All the basic concepts or all the properties or characteristics of object-oriented programming are being followed by Java also. That's why Java is object-oriented. The second feature is simple. Java is a very easy to learn and its syntax is also very simple, clean and easy to understand. According to Sun, Java language is a simple programming language because Java syntax is based on C++. So those who already know C++, for them, for those programmers, learning Java after C++ is much more easier. Java has removed many complicated and rarely used features, for example, explicit pointers, operator overloading, etc. There is no need to remove unreferenced objects because there is an automatic garbage collection in Java. The third point is secured. Java is best known for its security. With Java, we can develop virus-free systems. Java is secured because no explicit pointer is used in Java. Java programs run inside a virtual machine sandbox. As you can see in this slide, that the left hand side is C++ applications and the right hand side is Java applications. In the left hand side, you can see that the C++ applications use runtime environment of operating systems to run. Whereas in the right hand side, you can see that the Java applications use runtime environment of its own, which is known as JVM or Java Virtual Machine. That JVM will reside inside the operating system, and using JVM, the Java applications can run. So this is one of the major differences between C++ and Java. Now, in case of Java, there are three things that are being used in order to make Java secured: class loader, bytecode verifier, and security manager. Class loader in Java is a part of the Java Runtime Environment or JRE, which is used to load Java classes into the Java virtual machine dynamically. It adds security by separating the package for the classes of the local file system from those that are imported from network sources. The next one is bytecode verifier. It checks the code fragments for illegal code that can violate access right to objects. The next one is security manager. It determines what resources a class can access, such as reading and writing to the local disk. Java language provides these securities by default. Some security can also be provided by an application developer explicitly through SSL, JAAS, cryptography, etc. The next feature of Java is platform independent. Now, Java is platform independent because it is different from other languages like C, C++, etc., which are compiled into platform specific machines, while Java is a write once, run anywhere language. A platform is the hardware or software environment in which a program runs. There are two types of platforms: software based and hardware based. Java provides a software based platform. The Java platform differs from most other platforms in the sense that it is a software-based platform that runs on the top of other hardware-based platforms. It has two components: runtime environment and API. Java code can be run on multiple platforms, for example, Windows, Linux, Sun Solaris, Mac OS, etc. Java code is compiled by the compiler and converted into bytecode. This bytecode is a platform independent code because it can be run on multiple platforms, that is, write once and run anywhere, ORA. The fifth feature of Java is robust. Now, robust simply means strong. Java is robust because it uses strong memory management. There is a lack of pointers that avoids security problems. There is automatic garbage collection in Java, which runs on the Java virtual machine to get rid of objects which are not being used by a Java application anymore. There are exception handling and the type checking mechanism in Java. All these points make Java robust. So basically there are 2 points. The first one is memory management scheme in Java, and the next one is exception handling scheme in Java. We all know that in order to run any program in any languages, some memory should be allotted. And we have already discussed in case of C versus C++ versus Java that in case of C or C++, the allocated memory should be deallocated manually. Whereas in Java, the allocated memory can be deallocated for us automatically by JVM or Java Virtual Machine. That is known as garbage collection in Java that we will discuss later in a detailed way. The next point for which Java is called robust is exception handling mechanism. Exceptions exceptions can be considered as errors which normally generate during runtime. Runtime errors are known as exceptions. These exceptions can be generated in Java programming language, and they can also be handled by JVM. So for these two reasons, we call Java robust. Exception handling mechanism is the third last chapter of this course. We will discuss it in that chapter. The next point or the next feature of Java is portable. Java is portable because it facilitates you to carry the Java bytecode to any platform. It doesn't require any implementation. The seventh point is architecture neutral. Java is architecture neutral because there are no implementation dependent features. For example, the size of primitive types is fixed. In C programming, we have seen that int data type occupies 2 bytes of memory for 32-bit architecture and 4 bytes of memory for 64-bit architecture. However, it occupies 4 bytes of memory for both 32-bit and 64-bit architectures in Java. That means Java is not dependent on the architecture being used. It is actually architecture neutral. The next point is dynamic. Java is a dynamic language because it supports dynamic loading of classes. It means that classes are loaded on demand. It also supports functions from its native languages, that is C and C++. Java supports dynamic compilation and automatic memory management also. The next point is interpreted. Java is interpreted. That's because of the reason that Java uses an interpreter to produce the output. Normally, we have seen in C and C++ languages that only a compiler is there in order to compile and run the program. But in case of Java, we will see that there are compiler as well as interpreter also. Compiler and interpreter both are used in case of Java in order to run a program. That's why Java language is called interpreted. The next point is high performance. Java is faster than other traditional interpreted programming languages because Java bytecode is close to native code. It is still a little bit slower than a compiled language, that is C++, but that's not a problem actually. Java is an interpreted language and that is why it is slower than compiled languages that are C, C++, etc. Because we know that compiler actually compiles the whole code at a time, whereas interpreter compiles the code line by line. So if we use only one compiler in order to compile and run a program, that will obviously produce faster output. Whereas if we use compiler and interpreter both in order to compile and run the program, that will obviously give you output a bit slower compared to the other languages which use only compilers. But that's not at all a problem in case of Java language, because so many other features are there that will obviously make it efficient and improved compared to other languages like C and C++. The next point or the next feature of Java programming language is multi-threaded. A thread is like a separate program executing concurrently. We can write Java programs that deal with many tasks at once by defining multiple threads. The main advantage of multi-threading is that it doesn't occupy memory for each thread. It shares a common memory area. Threads are important for multimedia, web applications, etc. We have already discussed the property of concurrency while discussing major elements of object model. Concurrency can be achieved by implementing multiple threads in Java programming language. The last but not the least feature is distributed. Java is a distributed language because it facilitates users to create distributed applications in Java. RMI and EJB are used for creating distributed applications. This feature of Java makes us able to access files by calling the methods from any machine on the internet. So these are the features or characteristics or properties of Java. Why we should use Java programming language as one of the most efficient object-oriented programming language compared to any other languages that we have already learned like C or C++, which are procedural programming language or a mixture of procedural and object-oriented programming language. So let's move on to the next topic, bytecode and JVM. So these two terms, bytecode and JVM, have been used by me many times in my previous slides. So now let's discuss about these two terms in detail. Suppose we have written a source code in Java or a program in Java. Now we have already told that Java program uses compiler and interpreter both in order to produce the output. Now how compiler and interpreter both can be used in Java, let's see that. Whenever you have written a source code or program correctly, you will first compile the program using the compiler of Java, and the Java compiler is called Javac. Whenever you compile a Java program or a Java source code, an intermediate code will be generated that will be close to the native code or the final output. This intermediate code will be stored in a .class file. Suppose the program that you have written has a file name A, and all the Java programs always have an extension .java. Like you have learned that all the C programs always have extensions .c, and all the C++ programs always have extensions .cpp. Similarly, the Java programs also have the extension as .java. So if your file name is A, then the Java file name should be a.java. Suppose you have written a program and the file name is A, then the complete file name will be a.java. When you compile this a.java, at first the compilation takes place in case of Java programming. So when you compile this a.java file, an intermediate code will be generated, and that code will be kept inside a .class file with the same name as the original file. If the original file name is A, the intermediate code that will be generated will be kept inside the A file, and the extension of that file will be .class. So this intermediate code will be kept inside the .class file, and the name of the .class file will be same as the file name of the source code or program. Then this intermediate code will be interpreted by the interpreter, and the interpreter in Java is called JVM or Java Virtual Machine. Now, after interpreting this intermediate code, you can see the output. This intermediate code is known as bytecode, which we, the normal human being, cannot understand. It can only be understood by the interpreter JVM. So this is the flow of execution in a Java program. First, we will write down the source code or program, save it using a file, save it using a file name. Here in our case, we have given a file name as A, suppose, and the extension will be .java. So the whole file name will be a.java. Obviously, there are some rules for giving file names of a Java program that we will discuss later. Now this a.java file will be compiled by the Javac compiler to create or generate an intermediate code which is known as bytecode. Bytecode is nothing but a set of instructions. Those set of instructions or intermediate code is kept inside a .class file. The extension is .class and the file name is same as the program name. If your program name is A, the file name will also be A. Remember that one Java program can contain more than one number of classes. So if your program contains 5 classes, 5 .class files for each of the classes will be generated. So we will discuss this case later in the next lecture. So as of now, just keep in mind that only one class is there in this source code and we have named it as a.java. As there is only one class in the program, so only one .class file has been generated with the same name as the class name, which is A, as the file name, which is A. And the intermediate code is known as bytecode. Then this bytecode will be interpreted by the JVM or Java Virtual Machine to produce the output that we can see on screen. So JVM basically is Java Virtual Machine that is used as an interpreter in order to interpret the bytecode and to produce the output. Bytecode cannot be understood by the human beings. Bytecode can only be understood by JVM or the interpreter. So this is the flow of execution of a Java program. Now, we have discussed bytecode and JVM so far. Now let us discuss a more detailed concept of bytecode and JVM. So as of now, we have seen that bytecode and JVM are two most important features of Java, because if you want to have a clear idea of Java programming language, you have to know and you have to understand the basic concept of bytecode and JVM. So bytecode is basically an intermediate code created after compilation of the source code. JVM will interpret the bytecode to produce the output. So we have seen that compiler and interpreter both are used in order to produce the output in a Java program. That's why Java is also called compiled interpreted language. Java is also called compiled interpreted language because compiler and interpreter both are used in order to produce output. If one thing is missing, you cannot see the output of a Java program. Now let's discuss about why we are saying that bytecodes are portable and Java is platform independent. So let's go back to the PowerPoint slide. Now see, in this slide, you can see that the class files are taken to three platforms. We have already discussed about platform. Platform is basically nothing but a software environment or a hardware environment where a program can run or execute. So there are three environments that we can see on this slide: Mac OS, Windows OS, and Linux OS. So the dot class files will actually contain the bytecode of each of the classes that are being used in a program. Now, if you take the dot class file and if you take them to some other platform or to some other environment or to some other operating system, they will surely run, provided that the JVM must be installed. That means you can take the bytecode or the dot class file with you. If suppose you have suppose you have written a Java program inside a file a.java which contains only one class named A. So the dot class file will be a dot class which will contain the bytecode. Now bytecode generating is possible only if you compile a Java program. That is the thing that we have discussed till now. So after compilation and after generation of this dot class file, we took that dot class file and we have gone to some other platform. Suppose we have generated this dot class file in a Windows platform and we take this dot class file and we go to some Linux platform. There also this bytecode will run provided that JVM is installed, because we know that in order to run the bytecode only JVM is needed, compiler is not needed. So JVM must be installed in the Linux OS in order to run the bytecode. Similarly, if you take this dot class file to some other environment, say Mac OS, the JVM must be installed in order to run the dot class file, because we know that bytecode can only be interpreted by the JVMs. That means in all the three platforms this dot class file can run, provided that the JVM must be installed. That means the JVM version or the JVM will vary depending on the platform, but the dot class file will not vary. That means we can say that JVM always depends on the platform, because the JVM version or the JVM software will vary depending on the platform. The JVM that is being supported by Mac OS will not be supported in Windows OS, and the same supported by Windows OS will not be supported by Linux OS. That means JVM depends on the platform. So JVM is platform dependent, whereas Java programs are platform independent because dot class file doesn't depend on the platform. The only requirement is that the JVM needs to be installed. Otherwise, if the JVMs are installed, the .class file can run on any platform. So the .class file will run irrespective of the platforms. That means the Java language is actually platform independent, sorry. It actually doesn't depend on the platform. It can run on any platform provided that the JVM must be installed. So JVM is platform dependent, whereas Java is platform independent. This is a very, very important concept while learning Java, that why Java is platform independent. And this is the main difference between C++ and Java, that C++ is platform dependent, whereas Java is a platform independent language. C++, in case of C++, in order to run some C++ programs, the compilers must be installed. You cannot take that C++ programs to any machine and run. But you can do this in case of Java programs. You can take the .class file to any platforms and it will obviously run. That's why Java is called platform independent language, whereas JVM is platform dependent. So keep in mind that this is the major or main difference between C++ and Java. That is, C++ is platform dependent, whereas Java is platform independent. So now let's go back to the slide. The same thing is described here also. If we take the .class file with us and if we run it in Mac OS, it will run. If we run it in Windows OS, it will run. If we run it in Linux platform, it will run, provided that the JVM must be installed. But the JVM will differ from platform to platform. The JVM that is supported by Mac OS will not be supported by Windows or Linux OS. So JVM will vary depending on the platform. That's why JVM is platform dependent. But Java programs doesn't vary. Java program doesn't vary depending on the platforms. Java programs will run in any platforms. It is independent of the platform. That's why Java programs are called platform independent languages. So three most important features that we have learned today are bytecode JVM, Java is compiled interpreted language, and why Java is called platform independent and JVM is platform dependent. So these are one of the most important basic concepts of Java. So before going into the detail of Java language, you should have a good knowledge of these concepts. Thank you so much for listening to today's lecture. See you in the next lecture.